If someone had told me I'd marry a 33-year-old woman as a favor, I would have said I'm not that desperate or that kind. Some days it feels like I've faded out of existence. At 57, tucked away alone among dusty archives and neglected relics, I can't help but wonder if anyone would even notice if I vanished into the shelves. My name is Eleanor Marshall, and for 3 decades, I've been arranging other people's stories while somehow losing track of my own. Morning light streamed through the tall windows of the Kingsport Museum, casting stretched-out shadows across my desk as I worked through a new shipment of 19th century textiles. Then the whole building seemed to tremble. Engines roared from the street, followed by a noise like a small explosion. "What the hell was that?" I muttered, hurrying to the window. Outside, a blonde woman in leather gear stood beside a smoking motorcycle, ripping off her helmet and swearing in rapid Spanish. Even from 3 floors up, I could see her hands shaking with pure rage. She kicked the bike's tire, then immediately regretted it, hopping on one foot. Something about her raw emotion struck me. Most people hide their feelings behind polite masks, but this woman wore hers like battle armor. Later that afternoon, I forced myself to leave the museum's comfortable isolation. The annual Spring Cultural Festival filled downtown with music and laughter. I usually avoided crowds, but Mrs. Liu had been pestering me about her pottery booth for weeks. The festival buzzed with families and couples, enjoying the warm April air. I wandered past food trucks and craft vendors, feeling increasingly out of place among all the joy and connection. Then I saw her again. The motorcycle woman stood at Mrs. Liu's pottery display, holding a delicate blue vase. Up close, she was even more striking. Blonde hair caught the sunlight, and her blue eyes held depths I couldn't quite read. She'd changed from leather into jeans and a simple white t-shirt that somehow made her look both vulnerable and dangerous. "Excuse me," I said, reaching for the same piece. Our fingers brushed as we both touched the ceramic surface. The contact lasted maybe 2 seconds, but something shifted in the air between us. "Sorry, I was just admiring the craftsmanship," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't place. "The glaze work is exceptional," I replied, trying to sound professional instead of flustered. Mrs. Liu uses traditional techniques that date back centuries. She studied my face with surprising intensity. "You know about pottery?" "I know about preservation, old things, beautiful things that deserve to be protected." A slow smile spread across her lips. "I'm Valentina Cruz, and you clearly know more than pottery." "Eleanor Marshall. I work at the museum." "The one who catalogs forgotten treasures?" How did she know that? "Something like that." Valentina sat down the vase and stepped closer. "Want to grab coffee?" I have questions about preserving things that matter. Every instinct told me to politely decline and retreat to my safe, predictable world. Instead, I heard myself saying, "Yes." As we walked toward the coffee cart, I caught her scent. Motor oil and something floral. An impossible combination that somehow worked perfectly. She moved with confident grace like someone accustomed to taking risks and winning. "So, what brings a museum archivist to a street festival?" Valentina asked, ordering 2 espressos without asking my preference. Mrs. Liu's pottery and curiosity, I suppose. I accepted the tiny cup, our fingers brushing again. "What brings a motorcycle rider to ceramics?" "Beauty in unexpected places." She sipped her espresso, never breaking eye contact. "Plus, I needed to slow down after this morning's disaster." The smoking bike. "Sponsor meeting gone wrong?" Sometimes you have to crash before you can rebuild. There was something profound in our words, though I couldn't quite grasp what. We found an empty bench near the fountain, sitting close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "Tell me about forgotten treasures," Valentina said. So, I did. I told her about medieval tapestries and Revolutionary War letters, about the thrill of discovering someone's carefully preserved love story in a dusty box. She listened with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions that revealed an unexpected depth. "You make history sound alive," she said when I paused. "It is alive. Every artifact represents someone who loved, fought, dreamed just like us." Valentina leaned closer. "What do you dream about, Eleanor?" The question caught me off guard. When had anyone last asked me that? I used to dream about traveling, seeing the places where these artifacts originated. But that was long ago. Why long ago? Life gets complicated. Safe becomes easier than sorry. Safe is overrated. Valentina's hand moved to cover mine on the bench. What if sorry leads somewhere amazing? Before I could answer, she leaned in and kissed me soft, questioning like she was asking permission. And I didn't know I wanted to give. The world around us faded until there was nothing but the taste of espresso on her lips and the gentle pressure of her mouth against mine. When we broke apart, my heart was racing like I'd run a marathon. I should go, I whispered, though I made no move to leave. Should you? Valentina's thumb traced across my knuckles. Or do you want to see what happens next? 3 days after that kiss, I couldn't concentrate on anything. Medieval manuscripts blurred together, and I kept catching myself replaying the moment Valentina's lips touched mine. I was acting like a teenager. And at 57, that was both terrifying and exhilarating. Then she walked into my museum. I need your help with something, Valentina announced, striding past the security desk like she owned the place. She wore dark jeans and a fitted black jacket that made her look like trouble I wanted to invite in. How did you find me, Google? Plus, there's only one Eleanor Marshall who works with historical artifacts in Kingsport. She grinned. I have a project. I led her to my office, acutely aware of how her presence transformed the sterile space. She examined everything with curious eyes, touching nothing but somehow claiming the room. My racing team wants to create a heritage display, she explained. Photos, memorabilia from when women first started competing professionally. I need someone who understands preservation. That's actually fascinating. Most people don't realize how early women entered motorsports. Exactly. Valentina leaned against my desk. I was hoping you'd help me research it. The project gave me an excuse to see her again, though I suspected she knew that. We spent the afternoon digging through archives, her enthusiasm infectious as we uncovered forgotten stories of pioneering female racers. Look at this, I said, showing her a 1920s photograph. Evelyn Drake, one of the first women to compete internationally. Valentina studied the image intently. She looks fearless. She had to be. The world wasn't ready for women who refused to stay safely on the sidelines. Some things never change. Valentina's voice carried an edge I couldn't interpret. Society still punishes women who take risks. That evening, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years. I searched for Valentina online. The videos were mesmerizing. She moved around racing circuits with fluid precision, handling machines that could kill her without hesitation. In interviews, she was articulate and confident, discussing technical specifications with the kind of passion I reserved for medieval art, but it was the crashes that held me captive. Footage of her walking away from twisted metal, brushing off concerned officials with casual waves. She lived on the edge of disaster and seemed to thrive there. How could someone so reckless kiss me with such gentle care? The next morning, she texted me, "Coffee." I have questions about motorcycle maintenance in the 1940s. We met at a small cafe near campus. Valentina arrived wearing her racing leathers, fresh from morning practice. The smell of motor oil and excitement clung to her skin. Research going well? I asked. Better than expected. She ordered black coffee and a chocolate croissant. I keep thinking about what you said yesterday. Which part? About women who refuse to stay safely on the sidelines. Valentina stirred her coffee slowly. Is that what you did? Stay safe? The question stung because it was accurate. I chose stability over uncertainty. But what did you give up for that stability? I couldn't answer immediately. The truth was too complicated, too painful to examine in daylight with this magnetic woman watching me intently. Adventure, I suppose. Spontaneity, the possibility of spectacular failure or spectacular success. Valentina reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. What if failure isn't the worst thing that could happen? What is never trying at all? Her words lingered as we walked back toward the museum. At the entrance, Valentina stopped and turned to face me. "I want to show you something," she said. My world, would you come to my garage tonight? Every rational part of me screamed to decline. This woman represented everything I'd spent decades avoiding. Chaos, unpredictability, the kind of intense attraction that could derail a carefully constructed life. "Okay," I heard myself say. Valentina's smile was radiant. 7 o'clock, I'll text you the address. She kissed my cheek before walking away, leaving me standing on the museum steps, wondering what the hell I was doing. That afternoon, I couldn't focus on work. I kept imagining what her garage would look like, what it would feel like to enter her space instead of hiding in mine. At 6:30, I changed clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a blue sweater that brought out my eyes. I hadn't pimped for anyone in years, but something about Valentina made me want to try. Her garage occupied a converted warehouse in an industrial part of town. The building looked rough from outside, but when she opened the door, I gasped. The space was immaculate. Motorcycles in various stages of restoration lined the walls, their chrome surfaces gleaming under professional lighting. Tools hung in perfect organization, and classical music played softly from hidden speakers. "Welcome to my sanctuary," Valentina said, watching my reaction. "It's beautiful and completely unexpected." "What were you expecting?" "Chaos, noise, testosterone-fueled mayhem." Valentina laughed. "That's the track. This is where I think." She guided me through the space, explaining each project with obvious love. Her hands moved gracefully as she demonstrated techniques, and I found myself mesmerized by her competence. "Want to try?" she asked, handing me a wrench. "I'll break something." "Nothing here can't be fixed." Valentina positioned herself behind me, her hands guiding mine. "Feel the resistance." "Don't force it." Her breath was warm against my neck. The simple mechanical task became charged with awareness of her body pressed against mine. There, she murmured when I successfully loosened a bolt. "Natural talent." I turned in her arms, suddenly bold. "Is that what this is?" "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I want to find out." This time when she kissed me, there was nothing tentative about it. Her mouth was demanding, and I discovered I wanted to be demanded of. My hands tangled in her hair as she pressed me against the workbench, and for the first time in years, I felt completely alive. The next 2 weeks changed everything. Valentina started visiting the museum regularly, always with legitimate research questions that gave us excuses to spend hours together. She'd arrive with coffee and pastries, transforming my sterile office into something that felt almost like home. "Tell me about this," she said one afternoon, pointing to a photograph of a 1932 racing team. "The Brooklyn circuit," I explained, enjoying how she leaned closer to listen. "Britain's first purpose-built racing track. These women look like warriors. They were... Racing was their rebellion against everything society said they couldn't do." Valentina's hand found mine across the desk. "What's your rebellion, Eleanor?" "I don't have one." "Everyone has one." "Yours is just quieter." Maybe she was right. Maybe letting her into my carefully ordered world was the most rebellious thing I'd done in decades. That evening, I surprised myself by calling her instead of going straight home. "Want to see something special?" I asked. "Always." I met her at the museum after hours, using my key card to let us into the restricted archives. The basement storage area held our most precious and fragile pieces, items too delicate for regular display. "This is incredible," Valentina whispered, following me through climate-controlled corridors lined with archival boxes. I led her to my favorite section, where medieval illuminated manuscripts rested in custom-built cases. Under soft lighting, the gold leaf and vibrant pigment seemed to glow with their own inner fire. "This prayer book is 800 years old," I said, carefully opening one case. "Hand-copied by monks who spent their entire lives creating beauty." Valentina leaned over the glass, studying the intricate artwork. "They poured their souls into every stroke." "Exactly. That's what makes it precious." Someone cared enough to make it perfect like you do with everything you preserve. The observation caught me off guard. I just maintain what others created. No, Valentina turned to face me. You give these treasures life. You make people care about things they never knew existed. Standing there in the dim light, surrounded by centuries of human creativity, something shifted between us. The polite distance I'd maintained began crumbling. Why do you do that? I asked. What? See things in me that I don't see myself. Because you're worth seeing. Valentina stepped closer. You fascinate me, Eleanor. I'm not fascinating. I'm predictable and safe and ordinary. You're passionate and intelligent and beautiful, and you have no idea how extraordinary you are. The words hung in the air between us. I wanted to argue to deflect the compliment with self-deprecation, but the way she looked at me made protest impossible. I scare myself when I'm with you, I admitted. Good scared or bad scared? Both. Valentina reached up to touch my face, her fingers tracing the lines time had carved around my eyes. I scare myself too. When she kissed me this time, it was different. Slower, deeper, full of promise and possibility. I kissed her back with a hunger I didn't know I possessed. My hands gripping her jacket as if she might disappear. We spent the rest of the evening talking in whispers, sharing stories we'd never told anyone. She told me about the loneliness of being the only woman on most racing circuits, how she'd learned to armor herself with confidence because vulnerability was perceived as weakness. I told her about choosing safety over dreams, about the lovers I'd pushed away because intimacy felt too dangerous, about the nights I lay awake wondering if I'd traded my life for security. It's not too late, she said softly. For what? For everything. By the time we left the museum, dawn was painting the sky pale pink. Valentina walked me to my car, neither of us wanting the night to end. Dinner tomorrow? She asked. I'd like that. My place. I'll cook. The promise in her voice made my stomach flutter like a teenager's. Over the next few days, we fell into an easy rhythm. She'd text me good morning, and I'd find myself smiling at my phone like a fool. We'd meet for lunch, take evening walks, talk until midnight about everything and nothing. She was teaching me to live again, though I don't think she realized it. The night she cooked dinner, I arrived at her apartment nervous and excited. She lived in a converted loft with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Wine? She offered, pouring 2 glasses of red. Trying to get me drunk, I teased. Trying to get you relaxed. The dinner was perfect. Pasta with fresh herbs from our windowsill garden, crusty bread, and conversation that flowed like the wine. But it was the way she listened that undid me completely. She hung on every word, asked thoughtful questions, made me feel like the most interesting person in the world. After dinner, she put on music and pulled me into her arms. Dance with me, she said. I don't really dance. Neither do I well figure it out together. We swayed to old jazz standards, her hands warm against my back. She hummed along to the melodies, her breath tickling my ear. The domestic intimacy felt more daring than any passionate embrace. Eleanor, she whispered. Yes, I'm falling for you hard. The admission should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like coming home. I'm falling too, I whispered back. She pulled away just enough to look at me, her blue eyes searching my face. What do we do about that? I have no idea. Want to find out together? This time when she kissed me, I didn't hold back. I kissed her with 30 years of pent-up longing, with the desperation of someone who'd forgotten what it felt like to be truly wanted. We made love that night with a tenderness that surprised us both. She touched me like I was made of spun glass, whispering my name like a prayer. I discovered that my body still knew how to sing, even after years of silence. Afterward, lying tangled in her sheets, I felt more alive than I had in decades. No regrets, she asked softly. None? I assured her and meant it completely. The call came at 2 o'clock in the morning. My phone screamed from the nightstand, jolting me from dreams of warm skin and whispered promises. I fumbled for it in the darkness, heart racing. Eleanor, the voice was professional, clinical. This is Mercy General Hospital. Valentina Cruz listed you as her emergency contact. The world tilted sideways. What happened? Racing accident. She's stable, but you should come. I threw on clothes without looking, my hands shaking so badly I could barely button my shirt. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur of red lights and mounting panic. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and despair. A tired nurse led me through sterile corridors to Valentina's room, warning me about the tubes and machines I'd find. Nothing prepared me for seeing her so still. Valentina lay unconscious, her face pale against white pillows. Bandages covered her left arm and monitors beeped steadily beside the bed. The vibrant woman who turned my world upside down looked fragile as ancient parchment. The concussion isn't severe, a doctor explained. Broken ribs, fractured wrist. She was lucky. I stared at tubes delivering fluids into her arm at the oxygen mask covering her beautiful mouth and wondered how anyone could call this lucky. I pulled a chair beside her bed and took her uninjured hand in mine. Her fingers were cold, still smudged with motor oil under the nails. I'm here, I whispered. I'm right here. Hours passed. Nurses came and went, checking vitals and adjusting medications. I stayed planted beside her bed, afraid that leaving might somehow break the thin thread keeping her tethered to consciousness. When she finally opened her eyes, the relief nearly knocked me over. Eleanor, her voice was confused. Don't try to talk. You're in the hospital? The race. She tried to sit up, grimacing at the pain. Forget the damn race. You could have been killed. Tears I'd been holding back for hours spilled down my cheeks. The thought of losing her before I'd really found her was unbearable. Hey, Valentina squeezed my hand weakly. I'm okay. You are not okay. You're broken and bruised. And I was so scared. Scared of what? That I'd never get to tell you I love you. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Valentina's eyes widened, then softened. Say that again. I love you completely, ridiculously. I love you so much, it terrifies me. A slow smile spread across her battered face. I love you too. The next few days blurred together. I took leave from the museum to stay with Valentina as she recovered. Her apartment became my second home as I helped her navigate daily tasks with one working arm. I can butter my own toast, she protested on the third morning. Humor me, I need to feel useful. You are useful. You're keeping me sane. But I could see the frustration building. Valentina was used to speed and independence. Being forced into stillness was its own kind of torture. When can I get back on the bike? She asked the doctor during a follow-up visit. Minimum 6 weeks, probably 8. I watched her face crumple. Racing wasn't just her career, it was her identity. That evening, I found her staring out her apartment window at the city lights below. She'd been quiet since the doctor's visit, lost and thought she wouldn't share. Talk to me, I said, settling beside her on the couch. What if I can't do it anymore? Race, of course you can. It's just temporary. No, what if I can't handle the fear? Valentina turned to face me, vulnerability naked in her eyes. What if seeing that truck coming at me changes something fundamental? I understood then. It wasn't her body, she doubted. It was her courage. You're the bravest person I know. I wasn't brave when I called your name instead of focusing on the truck. I was distracted, thinking about you instead of the race. Guilt hit me like a physical blow. You're saying I caused this? I'm saying love makes you vulnerable and vulnerability gets you killed in my world. The words hung between us like a challenge. Was she asking me to choose our relationship or her safety? So what are we saying here? I asked carefully. I don't know. I just know I can't lose you and I can't lose racing. But I'm scared I can't have both. I moved closer, taking her good hand in mine. What if you didn't have to choose? What do you mean? What if loving someone made you stronger instead of weaker? What if having something to come home to made the risks worth taking? Valentina studied my face intently. You really believe that? I know that loving you has made me braver than I've ever been. Maybe it could do the same for you. That night, we made love with desperate tenderness. I traced the edges of her bandages with gentle fingers, kissing every bruise and scrape. She touched me like she was memorizing me, as if I might disappear if she let go. Don't leave me, she whispered against my throat. Never, I promised. I'm not going anywhere. But even as I said it, I wondered if love would be enough. Her world was dangerous, unpredictable. Mine was safe, controlled. Could we really build something lasting across such different foundations? 3 weeks into her recovery, Valentina was climbing the walls with restless energy. She'd started physical therapy and grown tired of my hovering. Go back to work, she finally said. I can manage a few hours alone. Are you sure, Eleanor? I love you, but you're driving me crazy with the worried glances. She was right. I'd become overprotective to the point of suffocation. The accident had unlocked fears I didn't know I carried. Returning to the museum felt strange after weeks away. My colleagues welcomed me back with questions about mysterious leave, but I deflected with vague answers about family obligations. How could I explain that I discovered love at 57, but a woman half my age had crashed into my life and changed everything? That evening, I returned to Valentina's apartment to find her sitting at her kitchen, table surrounded by racing magazines and laptop screens showing crash footage. What are you doing? Research. Analyzing what went wrong. I watched her rewind the same crash sequence repeatedly, studying it with clinical detachment that made my stomach clench. Maybe you shouldn't watch that. I have to understand it. If I can't figure out what happened, I'll never trust myself on the track again. There it was. The real fear. Not that she might crash again, but that she might lack the courage to try. Come here, I said gently. She looked up from the screen and I saw the lost expression she'd been hiding behind determined recovery. I don't know who I am if I'm not racing. You're the woman who makes me laugh every day, who sees beauty in old pottery and asks brilliant questions about medieval manuscripts, who loves with her whole heart and isn't afraid to show it. That's not enough. It's everything. I pulled her into my arms, feeling her trembling despite her brave words. The accident had shaken more than her body. It had cracked the foundation of her fearless self-image. We'll figure this out together, I whispered. Whatever it takes. 2 months after the accident, just as Valentina was cleared to return to racing, her life imploded in a way neither of us saw coming. I was organizing textile displays when Valentina burst into the museum, her face pale with panic. Her hands shook as she approached my desk, and I could see she'd been crying. They're here, she said breathlessly. My parents at my apartment. What's wrong with that? They brought in Javier Mendez, the man they want me to marry. The words hit me like cold water. In all our intimate conversations, Valentina had never mentioned any arrangement. She talked about her wealthy family in vague terms, but never this. I don't understand. Valentina sank into the chair across from my desk. It's complicated. My father made some bad investments last year. The family business is struggling. Javier's father owns a shipping company and marriage to me would secure a partnership that saves everything. But you're with me. They don't know about you, about us. Her voice cracked. They flew in from Miami this morning with contracts and wedding planners. They assume I'll just comply like I always have. I stared at her, processing the magnitude of what she was saying. So tell them no, it's not that simple. If I refuse, my parents lose everything. My father could go to prison for some of the debts he's accumulated trying to save the company. The rational part of me understood family obligation. The part of me that loved her wanted to fight for what we built together. What are you going to do? I don't know. I came here because I needed to see you before I decide anything. We sat in silence for several moments, the weight of impossible choices settling between us. There might be another way, I said quietly. What do you mean? What if you were already married to someone else? Valentina's eyes widened. Eleanor, what are you suggesting? Marry me? Not for real, just legally. It would solve your parents' problem and give us time to figure out the rest. The words surprised me as much as they did her. I'd never been impulsive, never suggested anything so potentially destructive to my carefully ordered life. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. We need each other, Valentina. This could work. It's insane. We've known each other for months. Does time matter when you know something is right? She stood up, pacing behind the chair. You don't understand what you're offering. My family doesn't just want a marriage. They want a Catholic ceremony with 300 guests and a reception that costs more than most people make in a year. So we do it quietly. Courthouse wedding. Just us present them with a done deal and then what? We pretend to be married while figuring out if we actually want to be together. The question hung in the air. I realized I was asking her to leap into an unknown future based on feelings that were real but untested by time. Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what I'm suggesting. Valentina stopped pacing and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. You would do that? Risk everything for someone you've known for months. I would do that for you. She was quiet for so long. I thought she might refuse. Then she pulled out her phone. I need to call Javier and tell him I can't marry him. Her hands shook as she dialed, but not because of the arrangement my parents made. I listened to her explain in rapid Spanish that she was already committed to someone else. Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, more definite. When she hung up, she looked at me with something like awe. They want to meet you immediately. My parents are demanding I bring my mysterious fiancé to dinner tonight. Okay. Just like that. Just like that. Eleanor, they're going to hate you. You're older. You're not Catholic. You're not part of their social circle. And you're a woman. They'll think this is some kind of rebellion, isn't it? A slow smile spread across Valentina's face. Maybe it is. That evening, I dressed more carefully than I had for any event in years. Conservative navy blue dress, pearl earrings, low heels. I wanted to look respectable, unthreatening. Valentina arrived for me at 7 o'clock, stunning in a black dress that made her blue eyes look almost unreal. She was jittery, fingers tapping an anxious rhythm on the steering wheel as we headed toward the upscale restaurant her parents had selected. Last chance to back out, she murmured as we pulled into the parking lot. Not happening, I replied. The Cruz family held court at a corner table that seemed designed to draw every gaze. Valentina's father, silver-haired and dignified, sat beside her mother who wore the polished elegance that money and breeding tend to perfect. Javier lounged next to them, as if he'd been styled for a magazine shoot. Mommy Poppy, Valentina said, switching into English for my sake. This is Eleanor Marshall. The silence that followed stretched far too long. At last, Valentina's mother managed a tight smile. Miss Marshall? Valentina tells us you work in a museum. I'm an archivist at the Kingsport Museum of History. How academic. The words slid out coded in polite disdain. Valentina's father didn't bother with subtlety. Valentina, what exactly is going on here? Eleanor and I are engaged, Poppy. We're getting married next week. If it were possible for an entire restaurant to go quiet all at once, this one did. Javier's expression snapped into something like shock. He looked as if someone had slapped him. Valentina's mother actually clutched her pearls literally. This is ridiculous, her father said flatly. You can't be serious. We're completely serious, I answered, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. I love your daughter very much. You're old enough to be her mother, Valentina's mother whispered. Age is just a number when you've found the right person, Valentina replied firmly, stretching across the table to take my hand. The argument that followed erupted in rapid Spanish, voices rising as accusations flew back and forth. I understood enough to realize they were questioning everything from my intentions to Valentina's grasp on reality. Eventually, Javier pushed back his chair and stood. This is humiliating. I'm leaving. After he stormed out, the conversation switched back to English, only growing more intense. You're throwing away your future for what? A phase, Valentina's father demanded. I'm choosing love over obligation, Valentina shot back. Something you've never understood. And what about the family business, your responsibilities? Find another solution? I'm not merchandise you can trade for financial security. By the time we escaped the restaurant, we were both drained. We sat in Valentina's car, stunned into silence for a long moment. Well, she said, finally. That went about as badly as expected. Are you having second thoughts? I asked. About marrying you? No, about whether my parents will ever forgive me? Absolutely. We don't have to go through with this if you're not sure. Valentina turned toward me in the dim glow of the parking lot lights. I've never been more sure of anything. The real question is, are you ready to marry someone whose family thinks you're corrupting their daughter? I thought of my quiet, orderly life from 6 months earlier. Then I looked at the woman who had dismantled it and built something new in its place. Let's go get married, I said. The courthouse wedding took place on a rainy Thursday morning. We'd arranged it in 3 days, racing through forms and blood tests with the efficiency of people running away from something, which, in truth, we were. I wore a simple cream-colored dress I'd bought the night before. Valentina chose a navy blue ensemble, refined and understated. We looked more like two professional women handling official business than lovers, about to take the greatest leap of faith of their lives. You sure about this? The clerk asked, scanning our paperwork with mild concern. Absolutely, we answered together, then dissolved into nervous laughter. The ceremony itself lasted exactly 7 minutes. Judge Alvarez recited the standard vows while the rain beat a steady rhythm against the hallway windows. When he pronounced us married, Valentina leaned in and kissed me with a tenderness that felt shockingly genuine for something meant to be a charade. Mrs. Marshall, she whispered against my lips. Mrs. Cruz Marshall, I corrected softly. The new name felt unfamiliar, almost foreign, as it left my tongue. At 57, I had never expected to share my identity with anyone. We celebrated afterward with champagne at an upscale restaurant, raising our glasses to a fake marriage that, with every passing hour, felt less pretend and more like the truest thing in my life. The legal documents in my purse seemed to carry unexpected weight. So, what happens now? I asked over dessert. Now we go home and pretend to be married while figuring out if we actually want to be. Your home or mine? Ours, Valentina said simply. We should probably live together if we're selling this performance. That evening, I packed clothes and toiletries into a suitcase, leaving my apartment for an indefinite stay at Valentina's loft. The practical arrangements felt surreal. We were playing house, except the feelings underneath weren't pretend at all. Which side of the bed do you prefer? Valentina asked as we prepared for our first night as legal spouses. I usually sleep in the middle. Problem solved. So, sliding into bed beside her felt both natural and terrifying. The legal bond between us changed something fundamental, even if we'd entered it for practical reasons. No regrets? She asked in the darkness. Ask me again in 6 months? Daily married life developed its own rhythm. I maintained my museum schedule while Valentina returned to racing, her confidence slowly rebuilding after the accident. We shared morning coffee and evening dinners, comparing our days like any ordinary couple. Except nothing about us was ordinary. Your mail, Valentina said one morning, handing me official-looking envelopes marked Mrs. Eleanor William Cruz. Seeing our names, legally combined, sent an unexpected thrill through me. The marriage might have started as convenience, but the domestic intimacy was transforming it into something deeper. Insurance company wants to know about my new spouse, I told her for the family policy rates. Tell them I'm dangerously accident-prone, but worth the premium increase. These moments of casual humor punctuated days filled with growing awareness of each other's habits. Valentina sang in the shower and left coffee rings on expensive furniture. I organized everything compulsively and fell asleep reading historical journals. You're adorable when you're annotating medieval texts, she said one evening, watching me work at the kitchen table. You're distracting when you're working out in the living room without a shirt. Fair point. 3 weeks into married life, physical attraction became impossible to ignore. We'd been careful to maintain boundaries, sleeping in the same bed, but avoiding intimacy that might complicate our arrangement. But desire has its own logic. Eleanor, Valentina said one night, her voice soft in the darkness. Can I ask you something? Anything. Are you happy with this arrangement? I turned to face her, our bodies inches apart on the king-sized mattress. Are you? I asked first. Yes, surprisingly, completely happy. Which scares me. Why does it scare you? Because this was supposed to be temporary. A solution to your parents' pressure, but it's starting to feel like something more. Valentina's hand found mine under the covers. What if it is something more? Then we're in trouble. Good trouble or bad trouble? I don't know yet. She moved closer, her breath warm against my cheek. Want to find out. This time when we kissed, there was nothing tentative about it. Months of careful boundaries dissolved as we gave in to the attraction we'd been fighting. Her hands traced patterns on my skin while I lost myself in the taste and scent of her. We made love with the desperation of people finally admitting the truth to themselves. Every touch felt like a confession. Every whispered endearment like a promise we weren't sure we could keep. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets that smelled like both of us. The magnitude of what we'd done settled over me. So much for keeping this simple, I murmured. Simple is overrated? Valentina traced lazy circles on my shoulder. Besides, when has anything about us ever been simple? She was right. From our first meeting at the pottery booth, we'd been careening towards something neither of us fully understood. What do we tell people? I asked about why we got married so quickly. The truth, that we fell in love and couldn't wait. Is that what happened? Isn't it? I considered the question seriously. Had we fallen in love or convinced ourselves we were in love to justify the impulsive marriage? The distinction mattered but felt impossible to untangle. I love you, I said finally. I'm just not sure when it started or where it's going. Does it matter? We're here now. It matters because your family will never accept this. Your racing sponsors might object to your sudden marriage to a woman. My colleagues are already asking uncomfortable questions. Valentina propped herself up on one elbow, studying my face in the dim light. Are you saying you won out? I'm saying we need to be realistic about what we're facing. And I'm saying some things are worth fighting for, even if the odds are against us. Her certainty was both admirable and frustrating. At 33, she still believed love could conquer practical obstacles. At 57, I knew better. But lying there with her warm body pressed against mine, her heart beating steadily under my palm, I wanted to believe it too. Okay, I said quietly. Okay, what? Okay, let's fight for this. Whatever this is. Valentina's smile was radiant in the darkness. Whatever this is. She kissed me again, soft and sweet, and I let myself imagine a future where love really could be enough. Where two women from different worlds could build something lasting despite the odds stacked against them. Outside, rain continued falling on Kingsport, washing the city clean for whatever came next. Reality hit us 6 weeks into married life with the subtlety of a racing crash. I was cataloging Roman pottery when my supervisor, Dr. Judith Clark, appeared at my office door with an expression I'd never seen before. Concerned, maybe disappointed. Eleanor, we need to talk. She closed the door behind her, which immediately put me on edge. Judith and I had worked together for 15 years with mutual respect and minimal drama. Is there something you'd like to tell me about your recent personal changes? She asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. I'm not sure what you mean. Your marriage to a much younger woman. A professional race car driver who, according to several board members, represents everything our institution doesn't stand for. My stomach dropped. My personal life doesn't affect my work performance, doesn't it? You've been distracted for months, taking unexpected leave, arriving late, leaving early, And now this sudden marriage to someone the community sees as reckless and inappropriate. Valentina isn't reckless or inappropriate. She's intelligent, accomplished, and I love her. Judith's expression softened slightly. Eleanor, I'm not questioning your feelings. I'm questioning your judgment. The museum board is concerned about our reputation. We depend on conservative donors who might not appreciate our senior archivist's lifestyle choices. The words hit like a physical blow. Are you threatening my job? I'm giving you a heads up. Some board members want you to choose between your marriage and your position here. The ultimatum hung in the air between us. 25 years of dedicated service reduced to a choice between love and livelihood. I need time to think. I managed. You have until the next board meeting. 2 weeks. That evening, I sat in our living room staring out at the city lights, trying to process the impossible choice I'd been given. When Valentina arrived home from practice, she immediately sensed something was wrong. What happened? She asked, settling beside me on the couch. I told her everything. Judith's veiled threats, the board's concerns, the ultimatum that felt like a noose tightening around my throat. Those bastards, Valentina said when I finished, they can't do this. Actually, they can. North Carolina is an owl employment state. They don't need cause if they want me gone. So we'll fight it. Get a lawyer? File discrimination charges. With what money? Legal battles take years and drain bank accounts. Besides, proving discrimination would require admitting our marriage started as a convenience rather than love. Valentina was quiet for several moments. Processing the implications. You're thinking about leaving me. I'm thinking about keeping my job, the pension I'll need to survive, the career I've built over decades. And what about us? What about what we've built together? The pain in her voice nearly broke my resolve. What have we built really? A few months of playing house while pretending a legal arrangement was something more. You don't mean that, don't I? Look at us, Valentina. We're from completely different worlds. You take risks for a living while I preserve the past. You're young and fearless while I'm middle-aged and practical. Maybe this was always doomed to fail. She stood abruptly, pacing to the window. So you're just giving up? Walking away because some narrow-minded board members disapprove? I'm being realistic about what we're facing. It's not just the museum. Your sponsors are pressuring you too, aren't they? Valentina's silence confirmed my suspicion. What did they say? I pressed. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. She turned from the window, her face a mask of controlled emotion. Henderson Motors is pulling their sponsorship. They don't want their brand associated with my lifestyle choices. 2 other sponsors are reconsidering their contracts. Damn it, Valentina. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was hoping we could weather it. That love would be enough to overcome the obstacles. And now I'm starting to think you were right. Maybe some things are too complicated to fix. We stared at each other across the room, the distance feeling impossible to bridge. All the intimacy we built seemed to evaporate in the face of external pressure. So what are we saying here? I asked quietly. I don't know. I just know I can't ask you to sacrifice your career for something that might not survive anyway. And I can't ask you to risk your racing future for a relationship that started as a legal convenience. The words felt like surrender, though neither of us wanted to admit it. That night, we slept on opposite sides of the bed, careful not to touch. The physical distance felt symbolic of everything pulling us apart. Over the next few days, we moved around each other like polite strangers. Valentina left early for practice. I stayed late at the museum. We ate dinner in silence, having exhausted our capacity for difficult conversations. It was sustainable in the way that slow poison is sustainable. The breaking point came during a quiet Sunday afternoon. We were reading in the living room, maintaining the pretense of domestic normalcy when Valentina suddenly closed her book. I can't do this anymore, she said. Do what? Pretend we're okay when we're both miserable. Pretend this marriage has a future when we're too scared to fight for it. I set down my magazine, meeting her eyes for the first time in days. What are you suggesting? That we stop pretending, except that sometimes love isn't enough to overcome everything else. The finality in her voice cut deep. Is that what you want? What I want is for you to choose me. Choose us. Fight for what we have instead of calculating the risks. And what I want is for you to understand that I can't throw away my entire life on a maybe. So we're at an impasse. It seems like we are. Valentina stood up, running her hands through her hair in frustration. I love you, Eleanor, but I won't beg you to stay married to me. I'm not asking you to beg. No, you're asking me to accept that your fear is stronger than your love. The accusation stung because it contained truth I didn't want to acknowledge. Was I letting fear drive my decisions? Was I using practical concerns to avoid the terrifying vulnerability of choosing love over security? Maybe we rushed into this, I said quietly. Maybe we should have waited, gotten to know each other better before making it legal. Maybe we're just cowards when things get difficult. Neither of us wanted to continue the conversation, but neither wanted to leave it unfinished. We were stuck in the terrible space between holding on and letting go. I need some air, Valentina said finally. I'm going for a drive. After she left, I sat alone in our apartment, surrounded by the life we built together. Her racing magazines mixed with my historical journals, her leather jacket hanging beside my conservative blazers. Evidence of two people trying to merge incompatible worlds. Maybe she was right. Maybe we were cowards. But sometimes being a coward was just another word for being realistic about impossible odds. When she returned hours later, we made love with desperate intensity, as if physical connection could bridge the emotional distance growing between us. Afterward, lying in her arms, I wondered if this was how love died. Not with dramatic arguments, but with quiet capitulation to forces too strong to resist. I don't want to lose you, I whispered against her shoulder. Then don't let them win, she whispered back. But by morning, we both knew winning required more courage than either of us possessed. The decision came from an unexpected source. I was reorganizing medieval manuscripts when Mrs. Liu appeared at the museum entrance, moving slowly with her walker, but determined. The elderly potter, who'd unwittingly brought Valentina and me together, looked around the lobby with curious eyes. Mrs. Marshall, the security guard, pointed her toward my office. Mrs. Liu, what brings you here? She settled carefully into my visitor's chair, studying my face with the sharp intelligence I remembered from the festival. I heard about your troubles. The gossip reaches even old women like me. Heat flooded my cheeks. I'm not sure what you mean. The marriage, the pressure, the choice they're forcing you to make. Her accent was slight, but her words precise. I came to tell you a story. I wanted to protest that my personal life wasn't suitable for discussion, but something in her manner demanded attention. In 1943, I was 23, living in San Francisco's Chinatown. I loved a Japanese woman named Aiko, whose family had been taken to internment camps. The words hit like cold water. Mrs. Liu had never mentioned her personal history beyond pottery techniques. Society said we were wrong on every level. Two women, different races, during wartime when loving the enemy could get you killed. But love doesn't ask permission from society. What happened? I chose safety, married the Chinese man my parents selected, had 4 children, lived a respectable life. Mrs. Liu's eyes grew distant. Aiko survived the camps, moved to Chicago, never married. I saw her once in 1987 at a pottery exhibition. She was still beautiful, still alone. Silence stretched between us as the implications settled. Do you regret your choice? Every day for 78 years. Safety is overrated when you trade your heart for it. After she left, I couldn't concentrate on work. Mrs. Liu's story echoed in my mind, a cautionary tale about prioritizing security over authentic love. That evening, I found Valentina in the garage working on her motorcycle with angry efficiency. She'd been spending more time there lately, avoiding our apartment and the tension that filled it. We need to talk, I said. About what? Our impending divorce. The word divorce hung in the air like a challenge. We hadn't used it before. though it lurked beneath every recent conversation about fighting back instead of giving up. Valentina looked up from the engine, surprise flickering across her face. What brought this on? I told her about Mrs. Liu's visit. The story of love sacrificed for societal approval. The regret that lasted a lifetime. I don't want to be her. I finished living with regret because I was too scared to fight for what mattered. What are you saying? I'm saying screw the museum board. Screw your sponsors. Screw anyone who thinks they can dictate who we love. Valentina set down her wrench, giving me her full attention. You could lose your job. Then I'll find another one. Museums exist in other cities. I have skills, references, a reputation built over decades, and I could lose my racing career. Then we'll build something new together. She stood slowly, wiping her hands on a rag. You mean that? I mean that loving you is worth more than keeping people comfortable with my choices. The smile that spread across her face was radiant. So we fight. We fight. This time when she kissed me, it felt like a declaration of war against everyone trying to tear us apart. The next morning, I called Judith Clark and requested a meeting with the full museum board. Are you sure about this? She asked. They're not in a forgiving mood. I'm completely sure. The boardroom felt hostile when I entered that afternoon. 12 conservative faces studied me with expressions ranging from disappointment to outright disgust. These people had supported my career for decades, but their warmth had evaporated. Gentlemen, ladies, I began standing at the head of the polished conference table. I understand you have concerns about my personal life. Board Chairman Thomas Bradshaw cleared his throat. Eleanor, we've always valued your contributions here, but recent developments have created complications. By complications, you mean my marriage to another woman. We mean your marriage to someone whose lifestyle conflicts with our institutional values. What values are those exactly? The value of love, commitment, building a life with someone who makes you better than you were alone. Don't be naive. Board member Linda Carver interjected. You know what this looks like? A middle-aged woman having a crisis marrying someone inappropriate half her age. Valentina is 33, not 16. She's accomplished, intelligent, and treats me with more respect than some people in this room. The tension escalated quickly from there. They presented their ultimatum with corporate politeness covering obvious distaste. Choose the museum or choose the marriage, but not both. I choose my wife, I said clearly. And I choose to believe this institution is better than the narrow-minded bigotry you're displaying. Chairman Bradshaw's face rained. Your resignation will be accepted effective immediately. I'm not resigning. If you want me gone, fire me. Put your discrimination in writing so everyone can see what the Kingsport Museum of History really stands for. I walked out before they could respond, leaving my badge and keys on the conference table. 25 years of career stability vanished in 10 minutes, but I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Valentina was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against her motorcycle with nervous energy. How did it go? I'm unemployed as of today. She winced. I'm sorry. Don't be. They showed their true colors. And now I'm free to find somewhere that values competence over conformity. What do we do now? Now we go home and plan our next move together. That night, we made love with the passion of people who'd faced down their fears and chosen each other despite the cost. Every touch felt like victory. Every whispered endearment like a promise we were finally brave enough to keep. No regrets? Valentina asked afterward. None. You only that it took us so long to find our courage. 3 days later, I received an unexpected call from Dr. Lavra Alvarez at the North Carolina Museum of Art in Charlotte. I heard about your situation in Kingsport, she said without preamble. Bunch of dinosaurs running that place anyway? Interested in heading up our new historical preservation department. The offer came with a significant salary increase, better benefits, and colleagues who cared more about professional expertise than personal lives. When do you want me to start? Next month, if you can manage it. Meanwhile, Valentina found new sponsors through organizations that actively supported diversity in racing. Progressive companies eager to associate their brands with authentic representation rather than hiding from it. Looks like taking a stand paid off, she said, showing me contracts worth more than her previous deals. Sometimes doing the right thing is also the smart thing. Sometimes the universe rewards people brave enough to fight for love. We spent that evening on our apartment balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below and planning our move to Charlotte. A new city, new careers, new opportunities to build something that belonged entirely to us. Think we'll make it? Valentina asked, her hand finding mine in the darkness. I think we already have. 6 months later, Charlotte welcomed us with open arms and fresh possibilities. The North Carolina Museum of Art felt like coming home after exile. My colleagues appreciated expertise over gossip and doctor. Alvarez proved to be everything the Kingsport board wasn't. Progressive, supportive, genuinely interested in building something meaningful together. Your medieval textile analysis is groundbreaking, she told me during my 3rd week. We're getting requests from universities across the country. Meanwhile, Valentina's racing career reached new heights with sponsors who celebrated her authenticity rather than hiding from it. Rainbow Racing Collective featured her prominently in their diversity campaigns, and her performance on the track silenced remaining critics. Check this out, she said one evening, showing me a magazine cover featuring her in full racing gear beside the headline "Breaking Barriers at 200 miles per hour." My wife, the famous race car driver. Your wife, who still can't believe she landed someone as brilliant as you. We'd settled into domestic rhythms that felt earned rather than accidental. Morning coffee together before separate careers. Evening debriefs about our days. Weekend explorations of our new city. Simple pleasures that felt profound after fighting so hard to protect them. The real test came when I least expected it. I was cataloging Renaissance paintings when my phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Eleanor, it's Elena Cruz, Valentina's mother. We hadn't spoken since that disastrous dinner in Kingsport. Mrs. Cruz, I'm calling to apologize and to ask if you might consider giving us another chance. The request caught me completely off guard. I'm not sure what you mean. I mean that watching my daughter succeed while being true to herself has taught me something about love, about what really matters. She explained that Valentina's racing achievements had made local news in Miami, forcing the family to confront their prejudices. Seeing their daughter thrive rather than suffer had gradually shifted their perspective. She's happier than I've ever seen her, Elena continued. And the interviews she gives about you, about your marriage, they're beautiful. She loves you completely. I love her completely too. I know. That's why I'm calling. Hector and I would like to visit if you'd be willing to meet us again as family this time. That evening, I told Valentina about her mother's call. She listened with growing amazement, then burst into tears. They want to try. They want to try. What did you tell her? That I'd discuss it with my wife and get back to them. Valentina pulled me into her arms, spinning us both around our living room with giddy joy. This is really happening. We're really making this work. The visit 2 weeks later went better than anyone expected. Valentina's parents arrived with cautious smiles and genuine attempts at acceptance. Elena brought homemade empanadas. Hector talked racing statistics with surprising knowledge. I researched your career extensively, he admitted to me over dinner. Your reputation in the academic world is impressive. Thank you. I also researched what it means to be gay. I realized I had many misconceptions. The conversation was awkward but sincere. Two people trying to bridge a gap they'd helped create. By the end of the weekend, we'd established the foundation for real relationship. Not perfect, not without ongoing challenges, but authentic in ways our original meeting never was. They're trying, Valentina said after they left. We all are. Spring arrived with an invitation that changed everything. Charlotte's Pride Festival organizers invited us to serve as Grand Marshals, honoring us as a married couple who had faced discrimination and still managed to build fulfilling careers. It feels surreal, I told Valentina as we got ready for the parade. 6 months ago, we were hiding from the public eye. And now we're celebrating in front of thousands. The parade route wound through downtown Charlotte, the streets lined with cheering crowds, rainbow flags fluttering and signs held high in support. We sat in a convertible, waving and smiling at people whose acceptance felt hard-won and incredibly precious. "This is what courage looks like," Valentina shouted over the roar of the crowd. "This is what love looks like when you stop being afraid of it." At the festival, they asked us to speak about our journey. Standing at the podium, facing a sea of faces representing every age, race, and background I could imagine, I felt the weight of what it meant to be visible. "Love doesn't ask permission," I began, echoing Mrs. Liu's words. "It doesn't check social calendars or tally financial risks. Love simply asks us to be brave enough to choose it." I spoke about fear, about what it costs to live authentically, about realizing that a life built on safety without love is just another kind of prison. In the end, I said that love mostly asks us to believe that being true to ourselves is worth whatever trials follow. The applause was overwhelming, but it was Valentina's radiant smile that meant the most to me. That evening, we renewed our vows in a ceremony that couldn't have been more different from our rushed courthouse wedding. Surrounded by friends from every part of our lives, colleagues, racing friends, museum staff who had become family, we shared promises born from our hearts, rather than legal paperwork. "I promise to choose you every day," I told her, holding her hands as the sky turned shades of orange and pink at sunset. "I promise to be brave enough to love you completely," she answered, tears streaming down her cheeks. When we kissed at the end of the ceremony, the cheers that erupted around us felt like a celebration not only of our love, but of love itself triumphing over fear. Later, as we danced beneath strings of lights in the garden behind the venue, Valentina leaned close and whispered in my ear, "Any regrets now?" I looked around at the faces of those who had stood by us, at the life we had built by refusing to compromise on what truly mattered. "Only that it took me 57 years to find you," I said. "Good thing you're worth waiting for," she replied. We danced until midnight, two women who had discovered that love really could conquer everything, as long as you were brave enough to fight for it.